Sometimes it is the people no one imagines anything, who do the things that no one can imagine.
Alan Turing was born on June 23, 1912 in Maida Vale, London, in the United Kingdom. He was the second child of Julius and Ethel Sarah Turing, née Stoney. In his early childhood, his parents were away in India for prolonged periods of time, and the only thing that he had from them was a toy bear. For a long time in Alan's youth, the only means of communication was letters. Here are two letters that Alan sent to his parents when he was a child. Alan's grammar and spelling in his letters have been faithfully reproduced.
Dear Mother and Daddy, I've got a lovely cinema kind of thing. Michael Sills gave it to me, and you can draw new films for it. And I am making a copy of it for you for an Easter present. I am sending it in another envelope. If you want any more films for it, write for them. There are 16 pictures in each, but I worked out that I could draw the boy that stood at the tea table. You know, the rhyme made up by Casabianca? I was second this week again. Matron sends her love. GB says that as I wrote so thick, I was to get some new nibs from T. Wells, and I am writing with them now. There is a lecture tomorrow. Wainwright was next to bottom this week. This is my patent ink.
The first letter simply shows Alan as a child, which is rare because the world rarely knows anything about Alan beyond his scientific achievements. This was when Alan's parents were stationed in India. Unfortunately, most of Alan's youth was filled with only intermittent visits with his parents.
April 1st, Fool's Day. Guess what I am writing with? It is an invention of my own, and it is a fountain pen like this. Included is a crude drawing of the pen. You fill it with squeezy and let go, and the ink is sucked up and it is full. I have arranged it so that when I press, a little of the ink comes down, but it keeps getting clogged. I wonder if John has seen the Joan of Arc statue yet, because it is in Rouen. Last Monday we had Scouts versus Cubs. It was rather exciting. There was no week's order this week. I hope John likes Rouen. I don't feel much like writing much today. Sorry, Matron says John sent something.
The second of these letters shows Alan's immense intelligence. Alan was known for having horrible handwriting. Instead of just bearing it, he decided to take matters into his own hands. Alan made a pen that would help other people like him. Pens that he would use would often let out more ink if you pressed harder. This often resulted in blotting of the writing. Alan was very young when he built this, and it did not work very well, but it was an amazing feat for a child with a pen and a mind. Alan was also separated from his brother for periods of time too. John was older than Alan and was able to take school trips. He was on a trip in France, is what Alan was referring to, so he spent quite a bit of his youth living with his matron. As a child, Alan was described as odd and dreamy because of his resistance to learn and the fact that he enjoyed watching flowers in the field instead of traditional school lessons. When he aged, he fell in love with science. His love was sparked by a book that his parents gave him for a gift, but this book focused more on the science of reproduction in humans and left Alan with an open mind and many questions. Alan Turing went to several schools throughout his lifetime, many of them being schools for the gifted and talented. He went to St. Michael's School, Sherborne School from 1926 to 1930, King's College in Cambridge from 1931 to 1934, Princeton University from 1936 to 1938, and the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton. While Alan enjoyed his studies, he formed a special relationship with a boy he met at the Sherborne School. This boy was Christopher Morcom. Unfortunately, Christopher died suddenly in February of 1930. The bomb was a decoding machine built by the British to decipher the Nazis' Enigma code in the Second World War. Originally, the bomb started out as the Bomba Cryptologiczna, made by Poland. Although this had the fundamentals that the British bomb had, it was much less advanced and did not work as well. The British bomb was based off of the Bomba and was the first modern computer.
Behind the bomb was the team working at Bletchley Park at Hut 8. The head of the team was Turing, followed by Gordon Welchman, Jack Good, Hugh Alexander, Stuart Milner Berry, and John Cairncross, who later turned out to be a Russian spy. A contributor to the making of the bomb was Joan Clark. Joan Clark and Alan became very close and became engaged. Joan Clark knew that Alan was a homosexual, but agreed to continue on with the engagement either way. Joan was a very good friend to Alan, and they formed a very good relationship. Eventually, Alan decided to break off the engagement using an Oscar Wilde poem called The Ballad of Reading Gaol, but the two still remain close friends. The Nazis were a group of extremists in Germany that was part of the Axis powers, which included Germany, Italy, Japan, Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria, and the countries occupied by these nations. The leader, Adolf Hitler, had instilled a strong belief that the world's issues stemmed from Jewish people. This belief, known as anti-Semitism, occupied the minds of many people and led to World War II. Hitler then proceeded to invade and occupy many countries, including Czechoslovakia and many more. France, Belgium, Poland, Denmark, and the Netherlands were part of the Allies until the countries became occupied by the Nazis. The Nazis lost the war, partly because of the bomb deciphering their code and using it against them. The Allies were the group fighting against the Nazis, including the United States of America, Great Britain, France, the Union of Soviet Social Republics, Australia, Belgium, Brazil, Canada, China, Denmark, Greece, the Netherlands, and New Zealand. The Allies eventually won the war. During this time, Turing was in direct correspondence with the Prime Minister of that time, Winston Churchill. The bomb deciphered the Enigma code and gave crucial details about Nazi plans and other information to the Allies. The making of the bomb was commissioned when the Allies tried to intercept and find out what Nazi transmissions were, and found that the code was encrypted and was indecipherable by their machines. The bomb was able to crack the code and make it readable. The bomb also gave the Allies the information that led to D-Day, the invasion of Normandy.
After the Second World War was won, word got out that Alan was a homosexual. At the time, homosexuality was illegal, and Alan was prosecuted. The charges against him were being intimate with another male and gross indecency. Alan admitted to the charges and was given a choice: go to prison for his crimes or undergo treatments to fix him of his homosexuality. Alan opted for the treatments. This included pills and injections of estrogen. The estrogen in his system gave him gynecomastia, the growths of breasts on the male body. However, he persisted in his studies of science. One of the experiments was with cyanide. This also left quite a bit of mystery surrounding his death.
On June 7, 1954, Turing was found dead in his home in Winslow, England. When officers found him, they recalled smelling a strong odor of cyanide. By his bedside was a half-eaten apple. The officers assumed that Alan was miserable because of his treatments and made the assumption that Alan had committed suicide by dripping an apple in cyanide. Although that is the most widely accepted theory, there are many more.
1. Over 50% of men can't smell cyanide, and the effects of cyanide poisoning set in a while after the initial overingestion. Alan was experimenting with cyanide, and it is probable that he couldn't smell it, ingested too much, and went along with his regular routine before cyanide poisoning effects set in. Part of his bedtime ritual was eating a few slices of an apple and then sleeping. Alan could have felt fine for a good while and then have died of cyanide poisoning during the night.
2. The coroner reported that there was evidence of blunt force trauma, which means that Alan could have been murdered by probably a homophobe.
3. The last theory is that Alan was deeply depressed. Towards the end of his life, he made out his final will, had a dream journal filled with dark dreams, and talked about suicide. A plethora of evidence also suggested that he was very deeply depressed.
Alan was pardoned of his crimes in 2003 by Elizabeth II, the current reigning queen.
Alan Turing was a strong man who encountered prejudice for being who he was, exchanged so many ideas with the world, and explored a world of science that no one had dared to explore, including morphogenesis, artificial intelligence, and many more mathematical advancements. Without him, the world would not be the same. There was a man who changed the world, and his name was Alan Matheson Turing.